The sun hung low over the vast expanse of the Serengeti, casting long shadows across the golden grasslands that stretched endlessly toward the horizon. Dust swirled in lazy eddies as a weathered Land Rover Jeep rumbled along a rutted dirt track, its engine a steady growl against the symphony of cicadas and distant bird calls. Inside, Emily Carter gripped the steering wheel with white-knuckled hands, her eyes scanning the landscape for any sign of the big cats her group had come to see. At 32, Emily was a high school biology teacher from Seattle on her first big adventure abroad after years of saving every penny from her modest salary. This safari trip to Tanzania was her dream escape, a chance to reconnect with the wild side of the world she'd only read about in textbooks. Beside her sat her husband, Mike, a software engineer with a perpetual squint from staring at screens back home. He fiddled with his camera, zooming in on a distant herd of zebras that flickered like black and white stripes in the heat haze. In the back seat, their friends Sarah and Tom lounged with half-empty water bottles, Sarah scrolling through her phone for signal, while Tom cracked open a bag of trail mix. They were all from the Pacific Northwest, rain-soaked souls seeking the raw thrill of Africa's untamed plains. "This is it, folks," Mike said, his voice laced with excitement. "Prime lion territory. Keep your eyes peeled." Emily nodded, but her mind wandered to the emails piling up back home, the lesson plans she'd rushed to finish before leaving. Before the story goes deeper, make sure to subscribe for more narratives like this. As the Jeep crested a gentle rise, Emily spotted movement in the rearview mirror, a small, tawny blur darting through the tall grass. She slowed the vehicle, squinting against the glare. "What was that?" she muttered, her foot easing off the gas. The others leaned forward, craning their necks. There it was again, a lion cub, no bigger than a large house cat, its fur matted with dust and its ribs faintly visible under stretched skin. It stumbled forward, paws kicking up dirt, before pausing to let out a plaintive mew that carried faintly on the breeze. The cub's eyes, wide and golden, locked onto the Jeep with a desperate intensity. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered from the back, her phone forgotten in her lap. "Is it him following us?" Mike twisted around, snapping a few quick photos. "Looks lost. Poor little guy. Where's the mom?" Emily's heart twisted. She'd watched enough wildlife documentaries to know the risks. A lone cub was easy prey for hyenas or even larger predators. But they were tourists, not rangers. Interfering wasn't part of the rules. Still, as she pressed the accelerator to continue, the cub bolted after them, its short legs pumping furiously to keep pace. It weaved through the grass, dodging acacia thorns, its mews turning into urgent yips that echoed in the open air. The Jeep picked up speed, but the cub didn't falter. For the first mile, it stayed just behind, a persistent shadow in the dust cloud trailing the vehicle. Emily glanced back repeatedly, her grip tightening. "We can't just leave it," she said, more to herself than the others. Mike shook his head. It's nature. Survival of the fittest, right? If we stop, we could make things worse." But his words felt hollow. The cub's determination was heartbreaking, a tiny fighter refusing to be left behind. Sarah pulled out her guidebook, flipping pages frantically. "It says cubs get separated sometimes during hunts, if it's alone too long." She trailed off, the implication hanging heavy. 2 miles in, the landscape began to shift. The flat savanna gave way to undulating hills, dotted with kopjes, massive granite boulders that jutted like ancient sentinels. The cub was tiring, its gait slowing to a lopsided trot, tongue lolling as it panted. Yet it pressed on, ears flattened against its skull, eyes fixed on the Jeep's red taillights. Tom, ever the pragmatist from their hiking group back in Portland, suggested turning off the main track to lose it. Give it a chance to find its pride. Emily hesitated, but the dirt road narrowed, forcing her to weave around termite mounds and dried riverbeds. The cub mirrored every turn, its small body a blur of endurance. By the 3rd mile, sweat beaded on Emily's forehead despite the open-air Jeep. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, and the air cooled with the promise of evening. The cub's mews had faded to ragged breaths, but it was still there, a stubborn speck in the mirror. Mike lowered his camera, his face etched with concern. "This isn't normal. It's like it's begging for help." Sarah nodded, her voice soft. "Maybe its family was scared off by poachers or something. We saw those ranger signs earlier." The group fell silent, the weight of the moment settling over them like the gathering dusk. As they crested another hill, the track descended toward a seasonal riverbank, the ground growing softer and muddier. The Mara River snaked below, its waters sluggish and brown after the dry season, fringed by tall reeds and fever trees. Emily slowed to navigate the steeper incline, the jeep's tires crunching over loose gravel. That's when the cub made its final push. It surged forward with a burst of energy, closing the gap until it was mere yards behind, then veered sharply to cut across their path. In the chaos, it slipped on the loose earth, tumbling into a shallow embankment just shy of the river's edge. Emily slammed on the brakes, the jeep skidding to a halt. Dust billowed around them as they piled out, hearts pounding. The cub lay sprawled at the bottom of a 3-foot drop, its chest heaving, one paw twisted awkwardly beneath it. It tried to rise, but exhaustion won. It collapsed with a weak whimper, eyes half closed against the fading light. The river lapped nearby, its current deceptively strong, hidden snares of mud, waiting to claim anything that fell in. "It's trapped," Emily breathed, kneeling at the edge. The bank was steep and slick, undercut by erosion, and the cub was too spent to climb. Mike scanned the horizon, but the savannah was emptying. Prey animals heading to waterholes, predators stirring in the shadows. No sign of a pride, no ranger patrol in sight. Their guidebook warned against approaching wildlife, but this felt different. The cub's gaze met Emily's, a silent plea that pierced through the rules. Sarah clutched Tom's arm. "What do we do? We can't just watch it die." Tom pulled out his satellite phone, fumbling for a signal to call the safari camp, but deep down they all knew help might not come in time. The river's murmur grew louder in the silence, a reminder of the fragile line between life and the wild's indifference. Emily edged closer, her mind racing with the risks and the pull of compassion that had drawn her to this continent in the first place. Emily's boots sank into the soft earth as she inched down the embankment, her pulse thundering in her ears louder than the river's lazy flow. The air was thick with the scent of wet mud and decaying reeds, a stark contrast to the dry grass they'd left behind. The cub lay motionless now, its flanks rising and falling in shallow rhythms, the twisted paw a cruel reminder of its desperate chase. She could see the exhaustion etched into every line of its small body, fur clumped with sweat and dirt, eyes glazed but still flickering with that unyielding spark of life. Mike hovered at the top, his voice a urgent whisper. "Em, be careful. That bank's unstable." Sarah and Tom stood frozen, Tom's phone pressed to his ear, but the signal bars mocked him with their emptiness. She reached the bottom in seconds that felt like hours, dropping to her knees beside the cub. Up close, it was even smaller than she'd thought, barely 20 pounds of vulnerability wrapped in tawny hide. It didn't flinch as she approached, too weak to react. But a low rumble vibrated in its throat, not a growl, more a plea. Emily's hands trembled as she assessed the damage. The paw wasn't broken, just sprained from the fall, swollen and tender. The real threat was the river. One wrong shift in the current could sweep it away, or the mud could suck it under like quicksand. "Hey, little one," she murmured, her voice soft as if soothing a scared student back in Seattle. "We're gonna get you out of here." The cub's golden eyes met hers, and for a moment the wild barrier between human and animal dissolved into shared desperation. Mike slid down next, his lanky frame awkward on the slope, carrying a blanket from the jeep's emergency kit. "We can't lift it alone," he said, scanning the bank. The embankment was undercut by years of seasonal floods, roots exposed like veins in the soil. Sarah called down instructions from above, her teacher voice kicking in. She'd led youth groups on wilderness trips. Use the blanket as a sling. Tom, get the water bottle and some jerky from the snacks. It needs hydration." Tom nodded, rummaging through their packs, his usual calm fraying at the edges. They'd come for photos and sunsets, not this raw intervention, but the cub's fate had woven them into the savannah's unforgiving script. Together, Emily and Mike worked quickly. She gently scooped the cub onto the blanket, its body limp but warm against the fabric. It let out a faint mew as they lifted, the sound piercing Emily's chest like a needle. The weight was manageable, but the climb was treacherous. Loose dirt cascaded under their feet, and the river's edge seemed to creep closer with every slip. Mike grunted, his arms straining. "On 3, he said, and they heaved upward, inching toward the lip where Sarah and Tom reached down with outstretched hands. The cub shifted slightly, its good paw clutching at the blanket, as if sensing the lifeline. Halfway up, a chunk of earth gave way beneath Emily's boot, sending her sliding back a foot. She caught herself on a root, heart slamming, the cub's heat pressing against her side. "I've got you," she whispered to it, more for her own reassurance. They crested the bank as the last sliver of sun vanished, the sky bruising into deep indigo. The cub collapsed onto the grass, panting, but safe from the water's grasp. Tom poured water into his palm, letting the cub lap at it weakly, while Sarah tore bits of jerky into tiny pieces, offering them with tentative fingers. It ate ravenously at first, then slowed, its energy ebbing. Emily sat back on her heels, wiping mud from her jeans, a mix of relief and fear washing over her. "Now what? We can't keep it, it's wild." Mike pulled out the satellite phone again, finally catching a weak signal. He dialed the safari camp's emergency line, explaining in clipped sentences, the chase, the fall, the rescue. The voice on the other end was calm, professional. Rangers were en route, about 20 minutes out, equipped with a crate and veterinary supplies. As they waited, the savannah came alive around them. Crickets chirped in a rising chorus, and in the distance a hyena's whoop echoed like a warning. The cub nestled against Emily's leg, its head resting on her knee, a trust born of exhaustion rather than choice. She stroked its ear gently, feeling the soft fuzz beneath her fingers, and thought of her classroom back home. Lessons on ecosystems, food chains, the balance of nature. This wasn't a textbook, this was the messy heart of it, where compassion clashed with survival. Mike sat beside her, his arm around her shoulders. "You did good, Em. Real good." Sarah and Tom kept watch, their faces illuminated by the Jeep's headlights, sharing quiet stories of lost pets from their own lives to fill the tense air. The Rangers arrived in a cloud of dust, their Toyota truck bouncing over the track. 2 men in khaki uniforms hopped out, one carrying a tranquilizer dart just in case, the other a portable exam kit. They assessed the cub efficiently. Dehydrated, minor injuries but otherwise healthy. "Likely separated from its mother during a storm last week," the older ranger, Joseph, explained in accented English. "Cubs like this, they imprint on movement. Your Jeep must have seemed like safety." He loaded the cub into a shaded crate, its eyes already drooping as the vet administered fluids. "We'll take it to the rescue center. If the pride's intact, we'll reunite it. If not, well, we give it a chance." Emily nodded, a lump in her throat, watching as they secured the crate. The cub let out one last mew before the door clicked shut, a sound that lingered in the cooling night. As the truck rumbled away, the group piled back into the Jeep, the adrenaline crash leaving them silent. Emily drove slowly now, the riverbank fading in the mirrors, the stars emerging overhead like a vast, indifferent canopy. They'd altered one small thread in the wild's tapestry, an act of kindness amid the indifference. Back at camp that night, around a flickering fire, they replayed the moments, the chase, the fall, the rescue, laughter mixing with awe. Emily felt changed, the savannah's pulse now echoing in her veins, a reminder that sometimes stepping beyond the rules saved more than it harmed. In the days that followed, their safari continued, but the cub's story became the heart of it, shared in whispers with other tourists and etched into their memories. Emily returned to Seattle with photos, not just of landscapes, but of resilience, the cubs and their own. Word reached them later from the camp. The cub had been released near a known pride, its limp fading as it reintegrated. A small victory in the endless wild. Leave a comment sharing what you thought about this story.